person. Yeah, Dr. Michelle Longmire was doing postdoctoral research at Stanford when she ran into the problem that inspired her to start Medable, a company that uses cloud technology to make clinical trials more efficient. That's going well. She's got 500 employees, and last week announced Medable raised a $304 million Series D round at a $2.1 billion valuation. But she didn't always know she wanted to be a CEO or a doctor.
My dad, who is a PhD bench researcher, said, you should consider being a doctor because you'll have more flexibility. As a child, I actually had a lot of anxiety around disease and kind of was a hypochondriac, thought I had pretty much every disease under the sun. And I thought, gosh, I could never be a doctor because it'll be too much, it'll be very stress provoking. Anyhow, went to medical school and actually learning about, the true how you care for people and really learning more about all of these different illnesses and conditions, never had anxiety around it again. But I wasn't going in thinking about being a pre-med. It was actually kind of on a whim that I decided to apply to medical school.
Michelle does like a challenge. She was a Division I soccer player in college, team captain, but it was her work in dermatology, researching a rare autoimmune disease at Stanford that focused her on technology. Big data, she realized, could help solve these problems faster. And since she was in the heart of Silicon Valley, she realized there was a potential business here, too. She started Medable in 2015, but it took the pandemic to show the world just how big health tech could really be.
There was a lot of interest, but not a lot of uptake. So when COVID hit, suddenly the entire medical infrastructure on the research side needed a technology like Medable to be able to really execute clinical trials. So within a week, we were getting calls from all over the world saying, hey, could we use your telemedicine? Hey, could you enable people to do vital sign measurements with connected devices? Everything in our industry shifted from about 5% of the industry utilizing these approaches to now north of 60%, 70%.
So guys, it's entrepreneurs like Dr. Longmire, startups like Medable that remind me just how big the transformation is that's happening in data and cloud. A lot of industries that haven't yet gotten the full benefit of mobile measurement, remote consultation, not to mention artificial intelligence. Think about how much more diverse clinical trial groups can be when you're not relying on those who live close to a hospital, guys.
So would she also, my understanding is there was a way in which this might also help speed up sort of FDA approval of drugs, and maybe that's related to what they're trying to do with these clinical trials that you mentioned?
Well, what she told me is that the process for getting a drug approved generally takes around 12 years, and about half of that is just the enrollment and that part of the process. They speed that up by a factor of 3. Wow. She said, right? So you can think about the cost savings involved there. $2 billion is generally what it costs, and half of that is in the enrollment.
I'm guessing that one of the appeals here is that more people would be willing to sign up to participate in a clinical trial if they didn't have to go and get checked out in person every other week or however long it takes, right? I mean, so you could expand the number of people who might be willing to play, thereby get better data, thereby move things along faster.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, is you had to be in physical proximity to a doctor or researcher who was taking part in the clinical trial before. Now, you don't have to. Part of what Medable does is make that the clinical trials exposed to a broader audience. You can do a lot of the measurement and adjustment of what's happening during the trial. If you're a doctor, you can do that online as well and through cloud tools.
Is this mostly B2B? How do they make money? And is she looking at an IPO anytime soon?
Yeah, it is B2B. I don't know about the IPO question, but hey, Series D, it's a pretty good size. And there's a lot of focus on health tech right now. I've been talking to a lot of health tech entrepreneurs in Fort Knox, Aaron Bali, for example, of Carbon Health, who is also a founder of Udemy, which is, coming public. So there's a lot of focus on these areas, a lot of them cloud-enabled that weren't getting focused before.
This is obviously it's the intersection of medicine and data science, and that's, by definition, complicated to me. But so many of these entrepreneurs see problem, find solution. That's really the trick of finding a new business, of starting a new business often.
And the resilience. I mean, think about how difficult it is to be a medical doctor and to be a CEO and to be a female tech CEO in Silicon Valley. She was telling me about a time early on when she had about 10 employees, and one of her investors who had been supportive said, you know what, maybe you just aren't going to make it. Maybe this company's kind of hit a ceiling. And she got on the treadmill, got the endorphins going. She's an athlete, and figured out who she was going to call, got over that hump. Now things are going much better.
Let me tell you, just because you were an athlete doesn't mean you get on a treadmill and solve problems.
What, you don't?
No.
I wasn't an athlete. So, hey.